Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. This episode is part of our Indies Introduced series, where we spotlight debut authors handpicked by booksellers from around the country. In each episode, a bookseller from the Indies Introduced panel will interview the author of a debut title featured in our program.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jessica from Books Inc. in the Bay Area, and I'm excited to speak with Jess Callans, the author of Ollie In Between. Jess Callans is a queer children's author and a wannabe illustrator with an MFA from Rosemont College. He lives outside Philly with his partner and 4 amazing kids, where they collectively bake, garden, and tirelessly pursue the human experience. Ollie In Between is his first novel, on sale April 8th, 2025. Jess, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I felt like Ollie was just this book, it's like a little tiny downy bird, and I wanted to carefully, go around and show every person I meet individually how perfect and beautiful this book is. So I'm really excited to get to speak with you today.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Ollie is such a beautiful character that I wish I could hang out with in real life. Did Ollie spring forth from your mind like Athena, or did you have a more layered approach? Did you have to move a lot to find the heart of the character?
So I think Ollie as a character, like the story really couldn't have existed without them. I really wanted to take on the Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, the puberty story. And Ollie felt like the only person I could imagine being in there. But where the layered approach did come in is that when we meet Ollie, they are really at this like a crossroads in every moment of their life, and so what they would do in different situations, like theoretically their identity is so in flux, they could choose to go any direction. And so that's a lot of like, I spent a lot of time sitting and being like, okay, like what, even though I know how this person thinks and how they feel like in this moment, what's the most genuine choice or reaction for them, because they're more passive and they're more internal. So even though the character was just like very clear to me, the decisions this character would make they weren't always like super apparent.
How did your own experiences growing up influence the story, or does Ollie's journey reflect more of the experiences you see in your children and students?
So I mean, as a kid, I played sports, primarily for the access to like boys' spaces. I actually didn't really like playing the sports, but I didn't want to do anything else. But other than that, like some of the observations and the animal metaphors, like I was a very animal driven kid, and really like the pad scene it was something I actually did. So it makes me really happy when people like that scene, because I'm like, good, at least I was charming, even if I was weird. But other than that, I think like the experiences that Ollie has are very different. For me and my life, the family dynamics, the friend dynamics are very different. And where we have similarities and what is like reflective of my experience is more the kind of questions that they're asking, and the internal processing, I think. And my oldest kid is 8, so I can't really reflect any of that onto them. So Ollie is definitely their own person in that respect.
Wonderful. Ollie faces a few kinds of grief over the course of the book, and I was particularly moved by the grief of growing up and leaving behind your younger self. What made you grab onto those threads?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, a place where Ollie and I had a lot of overlap. I clung on to the idea of my childhood for a really long time. And for even as an adult, I felt like that was like a very me thing, as I would reflect on my childhood, I'd be like, oh, everyone else wanted to do this thing, and here was what I was doing. And then I started engaging in these conversations with people as I was like contemplating this novel and how I would take it on. And I was having similar conversations that Ollie has about womanhood and the experience of growing up. And I realized, like, as I was collecting these conversations, that a lot of people were like, gosh, I felt like, I clung on to this thing from childhood, or, a stuffed animal in my bed, or reading this kind of book, and all of these little things. And I'm looking at these people, some of whom like I did grow up with, and I certainly looked at as like people who were growing up so much faster than me who also felt that way. And and so it just felt like a really important, thread to hold on to, that we're all kind of going through this through our whole lives, like even as adults, so where we're like constantly saying goodbye to whatever happened, next, and like we're kind of always trying to find our right self or whatever. And so I think that form of grief, saying goodbye to childhood, being such a layered forever thing. And then I don't know about you guys, but now that I'm in my 30s, I'm just sort of like, okay, I wish to say hello to childhood again, and all those things that I put away in my 20s, I wish to take back out, because you're kind of your most genuine self when you're a kid. So I think some of that too is saying goodbye to really important parts of you that you feel can't come with you into adulthood.
And welcoming them back also feels so
Yeah.
important to be a fully realized adult, I think, in a lot of ways. But maybe that's just the kid's bookseller in me.
No, I would agree.
um, the book is so gentle, yet deeply, deeply resonant. Was it always that way, or is there another version of the book and of Ollie that's louder or more bombastic? What was that kind of editing process like?
So interestingly, this book didn't go through like a ton of revisions. I drafted it like I wrote the first 30 pages for a class, and during that class, I, was having a baby. And so I did the revision, like the finishing, I guess not the revision, finishing the book with a newborn in the middle of the night. And I never wanted it to be a dramatic story. I toyed with like more tension in like the bullying storyline, or more clashing with the kids and parents, or, Ollie trying to do something that was more public, but it never felt very genuine to Ollie's character. And then also, like, once you start adding these like confrontational parent kid relate, or interactions, or bully interactions, it felt like I was inserting drama for the sake of kind of like tormenting my character in a way that they were already kind of internally tormented and didn't need that. So it didn't feel like it was necessary for the story. It might have been more interesting to read, but at some point I'm like, as a trans person, I just want to like torture trans characters with bullying just for that energy. But I finished this book with a newborn, and then immediately it was in like a mentorship program, Pitch Wars, and I did one revision with them through that. And then I got Beth as an agent in the January after, and did a revision with her. And then that fall had another baby, and was also revising like with Kat and Brittany at Mac Kids. So it was kind of like the storyline never really changed, and nobody seemed interested in making it bigger. And there was like some conversations about how to add a little more adventure with the queer book club, like friend group. And it just never, given who Ollie was, it never felt like they would do something so big and dramatic. Like they really needed to find themselves before they could make a first dramatic move. And so it was just, I think I wanted it to be a nice, slow, quiet, friendly book.
Achieved. I love that Ollie rings so true, like as a character, and it felt very sort of crystalline, almost like a bell. So, but I also loved how much space Ollie finds over the course of figuring out that identity, and how much more space there is still yet for Ollie to explore and grow, which is just a beautiful metaphor for life, that we are, only ever becoming. Do you think Ollie will ever not be in between? And what was it like to conclude the novel knowing?
Yeah, that was definitely the biggest hurdle that I had in writing this. Was I never wanted to write a novel that like felt somehow prescriptive, like if you feel this way then probably you're this. And I also wanted it to feel like sometimes the first step to figuring something out is just saying what you're not, because sometimes you can say with more certainty, like, this doesn't work, than you can, this does. And especially as a kid, you've only tried on so many versions of a self that you can't always know. The novel had like 3 distinct endings that I went through, and that was really where the most change happened in my revisions. But they all had the same note of like Ollie finding some way to utilize that letter that they write to Stella and for class to speak up, and never really establishing anything more than like opening these conversations with people about their gender identity and the certainty that like womanhood is not their end goal. And I mean, I think like you're saying that you are only ever becoming, and so whether I don't think Ollie will ever always feel in between. And that's kind of my hope, is that probably after this there will be plenty of in between moments as they go through puberty and decide whatever it is the right path for them. But I'm hoping that they will never feel in between as much as they will be in between in those times. And I think there's like a difference there, because when you feel in between, you feel like things are on either side of you. When you are in between, you're just kind of like, this is where I am. And I've definitely had people ask me, is Ollie a trans man, and will they eventually realize this? And I could not possibly tell you, because that's their journey with me kind of ended in this space. And maybe someday I'll pick them up later in life, but I kind of think that they did the growth that I could offer them, and the rest of it is, for somebody else to think about and enjoy, if that's what makes them happy.
And try on for themselves.
Yes, exactly.
So a favorite bonus question of mine. If Ollie was going to recommend a book to read after folks have finished Ollie In Between, what do you think it would be?
So I just finished reading A World Worth Saving by Kyle Lukov, and also fellow Indies Introduced Kyle Casey Chu's Queen Bees of Tybee County. And I think Ollie probably would have been very, very interested in those books. And as I was reading them, I was like, oh, I want to tell everyone about these books. So it would definitely be those. I was trying to think of like something less like, just like queer related or anything. But after I read those, I was like, man, I could have seen them having a really good time moving out of Another Quiet Story and into these like more energetic, I guess Queen Bees is still kind of quiet, but a different kind of character. So that's what I think Ollie would suggest.
Wonderful recommendations. Ollie can be a bookseller at my store anytime.
Good. I'll let them know.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait to put Ollie on the shelf and put it into the hands of readers. So don't be afraid to pick up Ollie In Between, on sale April 8th.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!